everybody. In this video, I'm going to be walking you through the first part of 4 parts that you're going to have to complete for activity 4.2b, which is on dimension communications. Really what I'm interested in doing here, we've already done activity 3.4, where we went through and we dimensioned 4 parts by hand. This is the first of the 4 parts that I required you to turn in, if this looks familiar. So you should be able to go back and either look at your worksheet or just go find the assignment on the internet and be able to dimension just like we did, but we're going to use Fusion360 this time. Okay, that's the point here. Notice in this part that the grid spacing is 1/4 or 1/8 of an inch. That's 0.125, so it's 1/8 of an inch for every block. And if I go through and I count across, I'll notice that it's 6 blocks wide, which is 6/8 of an inch. That's 3/4, 0.75. This is another 6, so that's another 3/4 of an inch. Up and down, I go up 3/8 of an inch to the first level, and then up another 3/8 of an inch to the top. And I notice that my overall depth is again 3 boxes, so 3/8 of an inch. That's what we want to create in dimension in Fusion360. So let me show you how to do that. First of all, you'll notice that I've created inside my folder, my project folder that's shared with the teacher. You're going to create a new folder and you're going to name it 4.2b dimension communication. Please make sure you start with 4.2b because that's going to order things for you. And please make sure you spell things correctly, okay? I'm going to double click on this folder and make sure that I'm inside of it. And once I'm inside of it, I'm ready to start creating. So over here, I already have a new part started. You can see it says Untitled in the tab. If I need to, I can come up here and click New Design. Okay, but I don't need to do that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create a sketch. I want this part to be upright, so I'm going to sketch on an upright plane. And I see this as a series of 2 rectangles. I'm going to start at the origin. Notice I'm locked in. The first rectangle is going to be 0.75 tall and 1.5 wide. And then the second rectangle, let me zoom in a little bit. Second rectangle is going to be from this top left corner. Notice it's locked in and it's going to come up 0.75 and it's going to go over 0.75. That's not correct. That's not correct at all. Actually, I got to make a correction here. I'm going to double click. It's not 0.75. This is 3/8 of an inch. And this is not 0.75, but this is 3/8 of an inch. Okay, there we go. Now we have the overall shape. I can take this dimension, I'm going to move it up a little bit just because I think it looks better. But we're ready to go. I'm going to choose Stop Sketch. I'm going to go to Home View so I can see it a little bit better. Now that I'm in this Home View, I'm going to go through and I'm going to extrude. So I'm going to create an extrusion. I can use E on the keyboard if I want to. There are multiple profiles here. There's a bottom profile and a top profile, so it doesn't know which one I want. So I just have to use 2 clicks to select them both. I'm going to take the arrow and drag it backward. Notice it creates a negative number now. I'm going to leave the negative sign, but we're going back a depth of 3/8 of an inch. Hit enter, and the part is created. This is the part that we want to dimension. So from here on out, everything is new. Okay, we've created parts in Fusion360 and Inventor before, but we've never dimensioned parts. Okay, in Fusion, it's pretty simple. First of all, I need to save the part. I'm going to name it 4.2b part 1. I'm going to click on the drop down next to model, and we're going to go in and create a drawing from this design. Now I have a different video that I'm going to create that you'll have to watch on how to create a custom title block. I'll try to find a way to share that with you. Once you have that set up, you'll notice that I have a sheet of A paper. It's grayed out right now, but I have a sheet of A size paper, an 8.5 by 11 that's turned sideways. It's going to measure in inches, and we're going to use ASME standards in order to dimension. So I'm going to choose OK. It's going to pop up with a drawing sheet. First things first, it wants to know where to place the front view. It also wants to know the scale of the front view. So as far as placement goes, I think this is probably okay, but I don't like the scale. I think that's too small. We're going to have way too much white space if I leave that. So I'm just going to play around with putting different numbers. That's a little too big. There we go, 2.5. Let's use 2.5, okay? I'm just going to drag this around until I like where it is. I'm going to choose OK. I can always click on it, grab the gray square in the middle. There we go. That looks all right. There's my front view. Now I'm going to come up here to drawing views and I'm going to choose a projected view. I can also use P as the keyboard shortcut. It wants to know first, what do I want to project? I want to project this shape. I drag my mouse to the right. I click again. I drag my mouse up here. I click again. I right click and I choose OK. And it placed a right view and an isometric view for me. Now I don't like this isometric view because one, I don't really care about the hidden lines here, and two, I want that to be shaded. So I'm going to double click on it. I'm going to change the style to shaded. I'm going to choose close. There we go. Now we have our view set up and it looks like this. So notice we were supposed to sketch an isometric view. We have that. We have the front view and we have the right view ready to go. So let's go through and dimension. This is really basic stuff. In this lesson, we'll get more advanced as we go along. Dimension is D on the keyboard if you want to use that as a shortcut. But the things I need to dimension, let's start with the heights. Okay, the first height that I know I need to dimension is right here. How far is that up? So I just click on the line. I come over here, I click a second time, and it places the dimension for me. Now, the second dimension I want is the total height from the very bottom to the very top. I can't really do that easily on the right-hand side, but I want to place the dimension over here. So, a couple of ways to go about it. I think personally, I'm not a professional drafter, so please don't judge me if you are and you're watching this video for some reason. I think it's perfectly acceptable to come over here and say, you know what, I'm just going to place it right here. It's going to make a lot of sense. If you don't like that, I'm going to undo it. We can always come over here and we can do an endpoint to endpoint dimension. So if I click on the green dot here and the other green dot here, it wants to give me an angle dimension until I move my mouse over. So notice now it's locking into place right here. I click one more time and I have a dimension on the right hand side. Both of my heights are now dimensioned. Now let's go through and let's do the widths. Here's the first width that I need to know, 0.75, drag up, and a second click places the dimension. I'm going to go endpoint to endpoint. I'm going to say then, get my mouse to hover, there we go. I think that's a perfectly acceptable spot for the second dimension. Now you can see why, maybe it's okay to take this 0.75 and move it over, because right now the extension lines are crossing. We're not really breaking any rules necessarily, but we can see how, it's starting to get gunked up a little bit, okay? So if anybody was to take the dimension and place it over here, I think that I would be okay with that. I'm not going to do it that way though. I'm going to actually come over here and redo it so we have that gap that's supposed to exist between the space, this little space right there, and the space at the bottom. You'll notice that didn't exist when I just dragged it over, okay? The last thing I have remaining is the depth. That would be here. I'm going to click. I'm going to place it, okay? So now we have a completely dimensioned part. A couple of things that I don't like. One is that this is supposed to actually be 0.375. It's rounding to 0.38. To fix that, we're going to come down here to annotation settings. We're going to change the linear dimension to go out to 3 decimal places. If we wanted to, now I think this is fine. It's 0.75. This is only 1 decimal showing. This is 3 decimals showing. I think that's perfectly acceptable. If for some reason we wanted to show 3 decimals for all of these things, we would click on this and display the trailing zeros, and this would make everything 3 decimals regardless of whether it actually needed them. I'm going to uncheck that box for now. The other thing that I don't like is the title block. So down at here, I'm going to double click on the title block and I'm going to fill in the author information with your name. So your name will go here, the date, and the assignment is now 4.2b, dimension communication. If it doesn't fit, we'll modify that, okay? So now you have an assignment that you can turn in. You're going to do this for now for the next 3 parts from activity 3.4. I will create a second video in just a minute that will help you figure out how to turn those files in. Also remember there will be a video for creating this custom title block, and I will share it with you in order to use.